Everything you build in your campaign, the world, the lore, the epic plot twists, all of that will only ever be seen through the eyes of your players' characters. And running a game, it's not like directing a movie with a locked-in script. It's more like directing a documentary, or more realistically, a completely unhinged reality show starring imaginary fantasy adventurers. Which means you shouldn't just prep like a dungeon master, you should prep like a director. Today, we're continuing my Campaign Building 101 series, so if you haven't seen the first two videos, make sure to go check them out. Everything will click a lot better that way. But today we're diving into how to plan your campaign collaboratively with your players, and we'll be using this documentary director lens to shape the process. Because as DMs, our job isn't just to build a world and hope that cool things happen. Our job is to agitate. We're here to stir the pot. We set the stage for internal conflicts, dramatic tie-ins, and big character moments to naturally emerge throughout the campaign. We can't force the story, but we can create the perfect storm for one. Your campaign is experienced through the PCs. So your first job, make sure they're characters you actually want to follow. Think of yourself as a director sifting through backstory footage looking for gold. You're looking for the kind of compelling story arcs that'll keep your audience, which is also your players, hooked. These are the ideas that'll help guide your prep through individual sessions and help you lead the party to a satisfying and maybe even happy end to their adventuring. So, how do you do that? First, we need some bones. Not for a sacrifice, for our campaign, weirdos. And so this is where our campaign actually takes shape. Step 1, define your campaign length. Mine, it's mid to long, which looks like about 25 to 40 sessions for us. We're a group that plays bi-weekly for about 3 hours each time. If you're part of a group that plays for 6 hours weekly, this could very much be a mid to short campaign. So take that into consideration, but this is more than just about your schedule. This is about knowing your group's pace, which is key. If they're the type of adventurers that want to explore every tavern, befriend every NPC, and loot every corner, trust me, your timeline just doubled. Step 2 is to lock in your premise and your end goal. Maybe things shifted during character creation for you guys, but this information will most likely come straight from your one-page campaign guide that we talked about in the previous video. For this campaign, the end goal is finding the Luminara crystal. That's the hook I gave my players. Will they actually stick to that goal? Who knows? But this gives me a direction to work with. And that's what we're looking for at this stage in creating our campaign's world. Step 3 is defining the inciting event. So for this campaign, the rival patron that the party didn't choose in session 0 is going to kick things off. They're going to start their expedition for the crystal, and that's going to force the players into action and creating that kind of time pressure throughout the campaign. So that way, if my players are kind of lackadaisical and I want to start speeding things up, I can kind of do that. But now we just need everything that comes between those 2 points. No biggie. At this point, I go into idea sifting mode. Nothing's really set in stone yet. I'm just collecting cool concepts and seeing what sparks something exciting. So throughout this process, I keep lots of bullet point notes on ideas that I think would be cool to see. I always have my handy dandy notebook around. And now it's time to just pull out some of my favorite things that I do really want to incorporate into this campaign. I'm pretty easy to please. I like everything. But for this campaign, I really want cinematic combat encounters. I want a rival team. I just really want the chance to build out bizarre caverns and hidden societies and terrifying monsters. So I'm gonna put that into my little idea section. Since this is a straightforward campaign, I'm not really looking to break this into any more rigid 3-act structures or anything overly complex that I would possibly do for longer campaigns. For ones like that, you might want to do this process for each arc. But what I'm doing, since this is a straightforward campaign, is focusing on challenges and boons. So the obstacles the party has to overcome and the advantages that might propel them forward. That way I can play with those story beats, those up and down beats. So while I'm building this out, I want to think about what major threats are going to test them, what allies, magic items, or even world events that might shift the tide back and forth. And as you go through thinking about these things, here's a simple way to transition these ideas from your pool of ideas into actual potential story beats. So you'll look at your big beats. Like I said, this is intentionally a simpler campaign for me. So the start and end are kind of my only big beats right now. I don't have any middle beats that I care about. But if I'm running a Lord of the Rings style trilogy game, I might have 2 other beats already that kind of shift the story between the chapters. So I take these 2 beats and then I start to apply the but and therefore rule I outlined in my video on the South Park storytelling method. I'll make sure to link to it below. So what I want is something like, but something unexpected complicates things for them. Therefore, the party has to adapt, leading to the next event. Or, but they have access to this boon and use it. Therefore, they're back in the running of finding the crystal. Stacking obstacles and opportunities like this creates a chain reaction of events that feel super organic, even though behind the scenes you've set up this kind of flexible framework to help guide the story's flow. But once I've got my personal idea pool filled with the things I want and my story structure is starting to take shape, like I know I probably want 3 major blocks for them that they have to overcome. But once I have that in place, I start to dig into my players' backstories to connect their personal stakes to the world. And just as importantly, this is going to help us generate NPCs, locations, conflicts, and ones that actually matter to them. So I don't just say, hey, send me a backstory, because let's be real, half the time you either get a half page of nothing or you get 3 pages of vague tragedy with no actionable details. So I have a tendency to guide the process with targeted questions designed to pull out more meaningful details. You can let them go wild if they're players that you've played with and trust to be able to do that already. But a lot of these questions come from the choices that players made about their class, their ideals, bonds, flaws. And for this particular campaign, I used Elise Resendez's Session Zero system. But another fantastic resource I now use is the Game Master's Guide to Proactive Role-Playing. I think it's such a great resource for helping players create characters that have more clear and actionable goals and motivations, and it really helps push the story forward when you have characters that have that. And so some example questions I might ask include what led them to becoming their class here, who's an NPC from their past they still think about, where is that NPC now, what's the worst or nicest thing your character has ever done. I definitely throw just some vague ones in, but if you want a big ass list of potential questions to ask your players, I have another Notion freebie for y'all. It includes a bunch of potential questions, the template I used while planning all of this, and also some troubleshooting tips that can help deal with table conflict when it comes to character creation. And I'll get to that a little later in the video. But make sure to go duplicate it so you can save it for yourself for later. But once I have their answers, I'll schedule a 20 to 30 minute quick one-on-one call so we can flesh out their character. And if you have a big group or you're short on time, because aren't we all, you can also create a collaborative Google Doc for this. But this isn't just about gathering more details. It's about identifying world-building elements that I can actually use. For example, one player is from a family of monster hunters, and so they tell me that their cousin died protecting a suncatcher from a monster attack. They actually just gave us a ton with this. We have a potential NPC with history in the form of that suncatcher. We have another NPC for flashbacks, their cousin that they admired. We have a potential plot hook. Was this just bad luck? Was something bigger at play? We have a location in the form of their family's training compound. And the player even gave me a list of family members that live at this compound, so I can pick a few to flesh out. Grandma Plum? Absolutely in. But pro tip, always check with the player first before developing their NPCs. Some players actually really love doing that part themselves, or they want something to stay in the past. And so I always want to work with their vision. But another player has a cryptid-inspired changeling character who grew up in academia. And so we're gonna build them out a university. one that offers resources, but that could also potentially tie into larger secrets. We'll flesh out professors, maybe some mentors, potential enemies, maybe one's a spy keeping tabs on them. We can flesh out classmates. Always love academic rivals, but maybe there's also a research partner that can help them. And since this character is likely to approach challenges through this academic lens, I can also start brainstorming some book titles, passages from ancient texts, and hidden archives that they might be able to dig through when searching for clues. Something that will let them play out their fantasy of their character. And I just keep going like this, working through my players' answers, harvesting details, and linking them back to my own ideas. The important thing to realize, though, is by asking these kinds of questions, I'm not just collecting character details for the sake of it. I'm mining for world building gold. Every answer they give me has the potential to feed back into my planning, turning their player input into organic conflicts and internal struggles, NPC relationships, and locations that already matter to them. So at this point, I've got my rough campaign structure, my list of prized ideas, my player-driven story hooks, and a massive list of NPCs, locations, and potential plot hooks that feel personal and meaningful to my players. And so now I can focus on recurring themes and connections. I really like to color code different character elements. I feel like it helps me spot potential overlaps between characters and their stories a little bit more easily, and because I'm a nerd, but I also just spend time coming back through these combined notes and start to look for ways to actively turn their backstories into either future plot twists or bigger hooks, and just see where these things can potentially fit into this overarching structure that I've started outlining. Most importantly, though, I actively avoid any overprep. I only flesh out things that have the potential to show up really soon. Everything else just stays loose and ready to evolve through play. I change things constantly based on things that the players do, theories they have, and making sure that you didn't spend a ton of time working on something makes it a lot easier for you to stay flexible. But an example of the kind of thing I might come up with can look like this. So like I said earlier, I know I want a really big, terrifying cinematic monster battle for this campaign. Maybe several, who knows? We're getting crazy. I want to get to throw some really, really good ones at this group. I think they'll really be into it. And so I have the PC that's from a monster hunting family, but I also have my little changeling cryptid PC. Guess what I can do? I can absolutely link both of these PCs to my big fucking monster. When the one PC's cousin died in battle where he was overrun by monsters, what if he was fleeing something bigger? What if the PC's dad has a hunch about it? What if I start playing some distant roars during sessions, ones that sound unfamiliar to even him during play? And then for my other PC, what if they were created by or somehow changed by this same monster? I even have another PC that's a sorcerer, and they're the only sorcerer in their family. They don't know how they got their powers. So that's a potential third tie-in. And by linking these threads, I don't just have separate player arcs, I have a unified character-driven mystery that's now baked into the campaign. Because the secret to really great dynamic campaigns, it's not just about what you build for your players to engage with, it's about what you build together. Because even after all of this prep, things will change. It's why I don't prep more than just the starting area and session 1 in detail. Everything else lives as a bullet point vague idea until we are getting to it. And for example, I knew I wanted a rival team. That was gonna happen. It's an adventure genre trope that I really, really love. But I didn't flesh them out until I saw through play what kinds of NPCs my players either loved or really, really hated. But once I had that info, boom, I built out the rival team right before they hit the story. And by staying flexible, I can shape the campaign around my players' choices and interests. And that's where the magic really happens. Obviously, this method isn't perfect. One of the potential problems with trying to approach campaign building through a more collaborative lens is that not every PC idea always fits perfectly. Like for this campaign, I accidentally left a changeling option in the database from my previous Feywild campaign. One of my players picked it for my Underdark horror campaign. Whoops. But instead of shutting it down and just saying, my bad, try again, I let them know what happened and asked, what if we reflavored this? What if your changeling wasn't Fey inspired, but instead linked to some sort of cryptid legend? And the player loved this idea. They liked cryptids even more than Fae. And so it actually ended up creating those awesome tie-ins with the other two PCs. So before you say, no, that doesn't fit, try asking questions. You might end up with something way cooler than what you originally planned to have, but yeah, of course, sometimes you do have to say no. If something breaks the game balance or clashes with core themes or makes other players uncomfortable or antagonized, it's totally okay to set a boundary. But using motivational interviewing techniques, it's a type of psychology technique. It makes those moments collaborative instead of adversarial. And again, I have a framework in my Notion template for this video, but I'll also probably be doing a video on dealing with table conflict at some point in the future. But another entirely separate issue DMs run into is some of your players are gonna give you the bare minimum to work with. So remember from the first video in this series, there are different play styles. And some of those play styles just aren't as invested in backstory. Players who score high in casual play style and not high in much else, but so can instigators who thrive on stirring the pot more than on deep lore. But here's the thing, this isn't about forcing deep storytelling on anyone. Instead, be upfront with why you're asking your players all these questions in the first place. Tell them that you want to make sure that their PC has cool moments baked into the heart of this campaign. And you can exempt them from writing you a novel, but just ask them, is there anything else you'd love to see? Some people discover their character through play, and that's fine. Some people don't care about story arcs at all, and that's also fine. Your job isn't to force them into a certain kind of play. It's to maximize what they do give you so that you can help shape the campaign of their dreams. So give them their chance, but work with what you've got. Because sometimes the best arcs can emerge from the smallest of details. So remember, you're not just a DM, you're a director. Put that on your business card. Go set the stage, stir the pot, and watch the magic unfold. If you want my full Notion templates and backstory questions worksheet, don't forget to grab them in the link below. And let me know in the comments, what's your favorite backstory you've ever seen? In my next video, I'm gonna go through how I used this campaign prep to plan my actual sessions. That way, all of this hard work doesn't just go to waste. So make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss it. And in the meantime, if you haven't already, make sure to check out these videos next.